The Eliani fleet's weapons slammed into Earth's impossibly vast force field and rebounded, obliterating a dozen of their own warships in blinding flashes of fire and shrapnel. Just minutes before, Jason Warren, a maintenance tech at the Smithfield National Lab, had been repairing a junction box in a forgotten storeroom. He'd found a strange metal orb, covered in alien etchings, humming with power. Without thinking, he touched a symbol on its surface. The orb pulsed, firing an energy beam into the sky. That beam now cocooned the Earth in an impenetrable defensive shell. Alarms shrieked through the facility halls. Dr. Alice Chen burst into the room, eyes wide. She shouted that the orb was an extraterrestrial artifact, recovered by the government decades ago. Jason stared at the pulsing orb, realizing he'd just activated humanity's only defense against the ruthless Eliani invaders. The warrior aliens had deemed Earth their next conquest. Primitive, divided humans would be easily crushed, the Eliani commander thought, but the force field's sudden appearance stunned the overconfident aliens. Their weapons proved useless against it. Aboard his flagship, Commander Spica snarled with rage as more Eliani ships crumbled under the backlash of their own firepower turned against them. On the shielded planet below, panic surged across continents as news spread of the alien arrival and mysterious barrier. Frantic people filled the streets. World militaries mobilized, bracing for invasion. Government agents seized Jason and Dr. Chen, interrogating them about the artifact's origins and the shield's power. No one knew if it would hold. Jason sat in a frigid concrete cell, head in his hands, as he grasped the enormity of what he'd done. By pure chance, his bumbling activation of the alien device had given Earth a slim chance at survival against a terrible foe. The battle for humanity's future had begun. As the Eliani ground forces poured through the shield, Earth's armies rushed to meet them head-on. The alien warriors marched out of their transports in perfect formation, their sleek black armor gleaming under the sun. They raised their pulse rifles and opened fire, sending searing beams of energy tearing through the human ranks. In New York, Major General Novak bellowed orders over the chaos. "Hold the line! Don't let them advance!" His troops took cover behind burned-out cars and crumbling walls, returning fire with everything they had. Bullets pinged off the aliens' armor as lasers sizzled through the air. The acrid stench of ozone and burnt flesh filled the streets. Novak ducked as a pulse beam shot past his head, melting a brick wall behind him. He glanced at his soldiers, their faces grimy and streaked with sweat. They were brave, but bravery alone wouldn't stop the Eliani. The aliens kept coming, an endless swarm of black-clad death. Halfway around the world, Colonel Petrov faced a similar onslaught in Moscow. The Russian colonel stood atop the rubble of the Kremlin, his uniform torn and stained with blood. He raised his fist, shouting encouragement to his men as they fought and died around him. The Eliani advanced relentlessly, their heavy boots trampling over the bodies of fallen humans. In the secure underground facility, Jason watched the battle unfold on a wall of screens. His stomach churned as he saw the destruction, the lives snuffed out by merciless alien weapons. Dr. Chen gripped his arm, her face pale. "We have to do something," she whispered. Jason nodded, his face hardened. He turned to the team of scientists and engineers hunched over the alien artifact. They probed it with sensors and scanners, trying to decipher its secrets. The orb pulsed and hummed, as if aware of the urgency. "What have you found?" Jason asked, his voice strained. A gray-haired scientist looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. "The artifact is more than just a shield generator. It's a repository of knowledge, a library of advanced technology left behind by the ancient aliens. If we can crack its code, we might find weapons, defenses, things we can't even imagine." Jason's heart raced. He glanced at the screens, at the brave soldiers fighting and dying to buy them time. "Then let's get to work," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "The world is counting on us." As the team delved deeper into the artifact's mysteries, the battle raged on. In New York, Novak led a daring raid to capture an Eliani transport. His soldiers fought their way through the alien lines, dodging pulse beams and plasma grenades. They stormed the ship, overwhelming the crew with sheer grit and perseverance. Novak stood on the transport's ramp, his face streaked with soot and blood. He watched as his men hauled crates of alien technology out of the ship, loading them onto waiting trucks. It was a small victory, but it gave them hope. With each piece of Eliani tech they captured, they came one step closer to leveling the playing field. Back in the underground facility, Jason and his team worked feverishly to unravel the artifact's secrets. They pored over the alien data, trying to make sense of the strange symbols and diagrams. Slowly, painfully, they began to understand. Dr. Chen pointed to a glowing schematic on a screen. "Look at this," she breathed. "It's a weapon, a device that can disrupt the Eliani's technology, render their ships and armor useless." Jason leaned in, his eyes wide. "Can we build it?" The scientist hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but it will take time, and we'll need resources, materials we don't have." Jason turned to the Council of World Leaders, his face set with tenacity. "Then we'll get them, whatever it takes. We can't let the Eleni win. We won't." As the team raced to build the weapon, the war continued to rage across the globe. Cities fell, millions died, but humanity refused to surrender. They fought on, driven by desperation, and the slim hope that Jason and his team would find a way to save them all. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and time was running out. Jason's fingers flew over the alien artifact, decoding its secrets with newfound urgency. Dr. Chen leaned in, her eyes widening as a complex schematic materialized on the screen. "Jason, look at this," she breathed. "The shield technology, it's not just for planetary defense. We can miniaturize it." He squinted at the intricate diagrams. "Personal force fields?" "Exactly. If we can adapt this, our soldiers might stand a chance against the Eleni weapons." They worked tirelessly, transforming theory into reality. Days blurred as they soldered circuitry and calibrated energy matrices. Finally, a prototype emerged, a sleek backpack humming with potential. Major General Novak arrived as they completed the final tests. His uniform was singed, his face etched with exhaustion. "Tell me you have something," he said. Jason nodded, strapping on the device. "Watch this." He activated the shield and a shimmering bubble of energy enveloped him. Novak's eyes widened as he fired his sidearm at Jason. The bullets disintegrated harmlessly against the force field. "Mass-produce these," Novak ordered. "Now!" Within hours, the first batch of personal shields reached the front lines. In New York, a squad of human soldiers advanced on an Eliani position. Pulse beams sizzled through the air, but the humans pressed on, protected by their shimmering barriers. Private Rodriguez grinned as alien fire splashed harmlessly off his shield. He lobbed a grenade, scattering the shocked Eliani. "How do you like us now?" he shouted. Across the Atlantic, Colonel Petrov led a daring assault on an Eliani command post outside Moscow. His troops moved with newfound confidence, their personal shields deflecting the alien weaponry. Petrov raised his fist. "For Russia! For Earth!" His soldiers surged forward, overwhelming the alien defenses. The Eliani, caught off guard by the humans' sudden resilience, fell back in disarray. As news of the victory spread, a spark of hope ignited among the battered human resistance. But aboard his orbiting flagship, Commander Spica seethed with rage. "Impossible!" he snarled, smashing a holographic display. "These primitives cannot stand against us." He turned to his second-in-command, mandibles clicking furiously. "Deploy the dreadnought. Crush their spirit once and for all." The dreadnought, descending on New York, was a nightmarish fusion of metal and alien biotech. Its colossal legs shook the earth as plasma cannons obliterated entire city blocks. Even with their shields, human soldiers scattered before its relentless advance. Major General Novak watched in horror as the war machine strode through his defensive lines. He grabbed his comm unit. "Warren, we need something bigger. That thing will level the entire city." In their underground lab, Jason and Dr. Chen redoubled their efforts. They pored over the artifact's data, searching for anything that could stop the Eliani behemoth. "Here!" Dr. Chen exclaimed, pointing to a pulsing glyph. "The artifact doesn't just create shields. It can amplify and direct energy weapons." Jason's mind raced. "If we can modify it, create some kind of energy cannon..." They worked feverishly, jury-rigging components and routing power conduits. The modified artifact crackled with barely contained energy. Jason hefted the unwieldy device, its weight a testament to its raw power. "I have to do this myself," he said, meeting Dr. Chen's worried gaze. "There's no time to train anyone else." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "Be careful." Jason emerged onto the ravaged streets of New York. The dreadnought loomed in the distance, a silhouette of destruction against the smoke-filled sky. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. As he moved towards his titanic foe, Jason activated his personal shield. The familiar energy bubble enveloped him, offering a thin layer of protection against the chaos around him. But he knew it wouldn't be enough against the dreadnought's awesome firepower. The colossal war machine turned, its sensors locking onto the lone human. Massive plasma cannons swiveled, preparing to annihilate this foolish challenger. Jason raised the modified artifact, praying it would work as intended. Energy crackled along the device's surface as the dreadnought's weapons powered up. In that moment, with destruction looming, Jason Warren stood as humanity's last, desperate hope against the alien onslaught. "Invaders," he squeezed the trigger. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the artifact, slamming into the dreadnought with earth-shaking force. The war machine's shields flickered and died as the concentrated blast punched through its armored hide. Alien alloys buckled and warped under the onslaught. The dreadnought staggered, its massive legs struggling to maintain balance. Arcs of electricity danced across its hull as internal systems overloaded. One of its plasma cannons exploded in a shower of molten metal and alien circuitry. Jason kept the beam trained on the behemoth, his arms straining under the artifact's recoil. Sweat poured down his face as he poured every ounce of his strength into holding steady. "Now!" Major General Novak's voice crackled over the comms. "Hit it with everything we've got." Human soldiers poured out of the rubble, personal shields shimmering as they charged toward the wounded Colossus. Rockets streaked through the air, peppering the dreadnought's legs with explosions. Tanks rumbled forward, cannon fire hammering its already damaged hull. The war machine's remaining weapons lashed out wildly, but the soldiers' shields absorbed the blasts. They swarmed up its legs like ants, using grappling lines and sheer dedication to scale the towering construct. Inside the dreadnought, Eleni crew members scrambled to regain control of their crippled vessel. Alarms blared as system after system failed. The ship's captain barked orders, mandibles clicking furiously. A breaching charge detonated, blowing open an access hatch. Human soldiers poured in, pulse rifles blazing. The narrow corridors became a chaotic battleground as Eliani defenders rushed to repel the boarders. Private Rodriguez led the charge, his personal shield flickering under sustained fire. He tossed a grenade around a corner, scattering a group of aliens. "Keep pushing," he shouted. "We've got them on the ropes." On the bridge, the Eleni captain watched in disbelief as sectors of the ship fell to the human assault. He turned to his weapons officer. "Initiate self-destruct. We cannot allow them to capture our technology." Before the alien could comply, the bridge doors exploded inward. Major General Novak strode through the smoke, flanked by his elite squad. "I don't think so," he growled, leveling his rifle at the captain's head. Outside, Jason lowered the artifact as the dreadnought's remaining legs buckled. The colossal machine crashed to the ground, sending tremors through the city. He sagged to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over his earpiece. "Jason, are you all right?" He managed a weak grin. "Never better. How about that for some alien tech?" In orbit, Commander Spica's mandibles worked furiously as he watched the dreadnought's defeat unfold on his view screens. "Impossible," he hissed. "How could these primitive mammals—" His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Commander, we've lost contact with ground forces across the planet. The humans are adapting our technology against us." Spica's compound eyes narrowed. "Then we will crush them from orbit. Prepare to—" An alarm blared, cutting him off. The bridge crew scrambled to their stations as a familiar shape appeared on their scanners. "Impossible," Spica breathed. "They've activated the dreadnought's engines?" On Earth, Dr. Chen stood before a hastily assembled war council. "We've decrypted more of the artifact's data," she explained. With the Dreadnought's technology, we can reach their command ship. Major General Novak nodded grimly. Then it's time we take the fight to them. As preparations began for the daring assault, Jason stared at the modified artifact in his hands. He knew the real battle was just beginning. As Jason raised the artifact once more, preparing to fire at the Eliani command ship, a blinding flash erupted from its hull. The massive vessel shuddered, its weapon systems powering down. "What's happening?" Novak demanded, his voice crackling over the comms. Before anyone could respond, a holographic projection materialized above the New York skyline. Commander Spisa's alien visage loomed large, his compound eyes reflecting defeat and resignation. "Humans of Earth," he intoned, mandibles clicking softly. "We surrender." A stunned silence fell over the battlefield. Soldiers lowered their weapons, exchanging disbelieving glances. Jason's grip on the artifact loosened, his mind struggling to process this sudden turn of events. In the days that followed, the world watched in awe as Eliani ships across the globe powered down their weapons. Alien troops emerged with their arms raised, laying down their advanced weaponry before shell-shocked human forces. The United Nations hastily convened an emergency session to address this unprecedented situation. Jason found himself thrust into the role of diplomat, his intimate knowledge of Eliani technology making him an invaluable asset. "We need to strike while the iron is hot," he urged the assembled world leaders. "This is our chance to secure Earth's future among the stars." Dr. Chen nodded in agreement. "The artifact has revealed the existence of a galactic assembly. We must leverage our victory to gain entry." Negotiations with the captured Eliani leadership were tense but productive. Commander Spica, stripped of his military authority, now served as a reluctant intermediary between Earth and the wider galactic community. "Your species has proven formidable," Spica admitted, his alien features unreadable. "The Assembly will not take kindly to your rapid ascension, but they cannot ignore your strength." Weeks of diplomatic maneuvering culminated in a historic moment. Jason, now bearing the title of ambassador, stood aboard the captured Eliani flagship. The cavernous chamber was filled with a dizzying array of alien dignitaries, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. A towering, crystalline being stepped forward, its voice resonating through the chamber. "We, the Galactic Assembly, hereby recognize Earth as a full member world." A ripple of murmurs, some approving, others clearly apprehensive, spread through the gathered aliens. Jason felt the weight of countless alien gazes upon him as he approached the central dais. "On behalf of humanity," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, "I accept this honor. But let me be clear, Earth will not be a passive member of this assembly." He activated a holographic display, showcasing the impenetrable shield now enveloping his homeworld. "We possess technologies that have already reshaped the balance of power in this galaxy. We will use them to defend ourselves and to claim our rightful place among the stars." The crystalline being's facets shimmered, a gesture Jason interpreted as unease. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Warren?" Jason's eyes narrowed, a hint of steel entering his voice. "Accelerated technology transfers, territorial rights throughout our solar system, and the resources to build a fleet capable of protecting Earth's interests." A chorus of protests erupted from the alien delegates, but Jason stood firm. He knew Earth's position was precarious. They were newcomers, flexing newfound muscle in a galaxy of ancient powers. But he also knew that humanity's survival depended on establishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with. As the uproar subsided, Jason locked eyes with Commander Spica. The Eliani's defeat had opened this door, but it was up to humanity to step through it. The real challenges and opportunities were only just beginning. As the gravity of Jason's words settled over the assembly chamber, a cacophony of alien voices erupted. The crystalline being's facets flashed rapidly, a clear sign of agitation. "Ambassador Warren, your demands are unprecedented," it vibrated. "The assembly has existed for millennia. We cannot simply—" "Cannot?" Jason interrupted, his voice carrying across the din. "Your assembly talks of peace and cooperation, Yet you turned a blind eye to the Eliani invasion of Earth. We defended ourselves, and now you balk at our strength? A hulking reptilian figure shouldered its way to the forefront. Archduke Razik of the Terralax Empire, his scaled hide glistening under the chamber's lights, fixed Jason with a predatory gaze. This human speaks of strength? Razik's forked tongue flicked out. They are thieves and scavengers, nothing more. They cobbled together stolen Eliani technology and now dare to make demands? Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the crowd. Jason's eyes hardened, but he held his ground. Earth has proven itself, he countered. We ask only for equal footing, not special treatment. Razik's eyes narrowed. You ask for the fruits of civilizations far older than your own. The Assembly will not be bullied by primitives who have barely left their own atmosphere. The debate raged for hours. Jason and Dr. Chen found themselves increasingly isolated as Razik's rhetoric swayed more delegates to his side. When the final votes were tallied, Earth's hopes for full membership were dashed. In a private chamber following the session, Jason paced furiously while Dr. Chen pored over the list of restrictions. Limited technology transfers, restricted travel rights, no representation on key committees. She read, her voice tight with frustration. They're treating us like children. Jason's fist slammed against the wall. Worse, they're treating us like a threat to be contained. He activated his secure comm link. General Novak's grizzled face appeared, concern etched in his features. How bad is it? The general asked. Bad enough, Jason replied. We need to accelerate our plans. If the Assembly won't grant us equal footing, we'll have to take it. Novak nodded grimly. I'll put our teams on high alert. We've made good progress reverse engineering the Eliani tech, but we'll need more. Leave that to me, Jason said, a dangerous glint in his eye. I'm about to make some new friends in low places. Over the following weeks, as Earth chafed under the Assembly's restrictions, Jason's prediction came true. Unrest spread through the galactic fringes. On the mining world of Ceti Epsilon, workers overthrew their Terralax overseers. The entire Procyon system declared independence from Assembly control. Razik, furious at the growing chaos, gathered his allies in a secure bunker deep within Terralax space. Commander Spixa, stripped of his rank but still carrying himself with military bearing, stood before the assembled warlords. The humans are more dangerous than we anticipated, Spixa clicked. If left unchecked, they could upset the balance of power we've maintained for generations. Razik's claws drummed against the war table. Then we crush them now, before they grow stronger. Your Eliani forces may have failed, Spixa, but combined with my fleets... As plots and counterplots unfurled across the stars, Earth continued its frantic preparations. In a hidden shipyard beneath the Martian surface, Dr. Chen supervised the final assembly of humanity's first true interstellar warship. The FTL drive is online, she reported, her voice crackling over the comms. Weapons systems are at 90% capacity. General Novak nodded approvingly as he strode through the cavernous facility. Good. We'll need every advantage we can get. A junior officer approached, tablet in hand. Sir, we've intercepted transmissions from the Terralax sector. It seems Archduke Razik is mobilizing his forces. Novak's expression hardened. Alert Ambassador Warren. Tell him it's time to call in those new friends of his. The storm is about to break, and Earth needs to be ready. Ambassador Jason Warren's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the intel from General Novak. The Terralax were mobilizing, just as he'd feared. It was time to set his plan in motion. Patch me through to Admiral Varric, he ordered, activating the secure quantum entanglement communicator. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the striking figure of the Vloraxi military leader. Varric's iridescent exoskeleton shimmered as she inclined her head in greeting. Ambassador Warren, I trust this isn't a social call? Jason's lips quirked into a grim smile. I'm afraid not, Admiral. The situation has escalated. I propose a face-to-face meeting. There are matters we need to discuss that are too sensitive for even this channel. Varric's multifaceted eyes gleamed with interest. Intriguing. My flagship will rendezvous with your shuttle at these coordinates. She transmitted the data with a wave of her upper appendage. Hours later, Jason found himself aboard the Vloraxi vessel, its bioorganic corridors pulsing with an ethereal light. In Varick's private war room, he laid out his audacious proposal. A Terran Vloraxi compact, Jason explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. Mutual defense, open technology exchange. The Assembly seeks to keep us both marginalized. It's time we change the game. Varick's antennae twitched as she considered the offer. Bold, Ambassador, but not without merit. The old guard has grown complacent, set in their ways. As they hammered out the details, word of their alliance spread through back channels. Other races, long chafing under Assembly restrictions, began to take notice. Meanwhile, in a fortress deep within Terralax space, Archduke Razik paced before a gathering of military leaders. His scaled tail lashed in agitation. The humans grow bolder by the day, he snarled. We must crush them before they upset the balance we've maintained for generations. Commander Speaksa, stripped of rank but still carrying the bearing of an Eliani officer, stepped forward. My forces are scattered, but loyal. Give us the means, and we will make Earth pay for our humiliation. Razik's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Then let us forge our own alliance, one that will restore the natural order. As tensions mounted across the galaxy, Earth raced to prepare. In a cavernous facility beneath the Martian surface, Dr. Chen and a team of Vloraxi scientists huddled around a prototype defense grid. The quantum entanglement matrix is stabilizing, Chen reported, her eyes fixed on streams of data. If we can replicate this on a planetary scale... Her words were cut short by a deafening explosion. The facility shook, alarms blaring as smoke filled the air. Through the chaos, Chen glimpsed a familiar silhouette, the distinctive outline of an Eliani assault craft. As the attack on Mars unfolded, Jason Warren stood before the Galactic Assembly. His voice rang out, filled with righteous anger. While you debated and delayed, our enemies have struck. The Eliani, supposedly defeated, have launched an unprovoked assault on a peaceful human colony. I call upon all members of the Terran Vloraxi Compact to stand with us against this aggression. The chamber erupted into pandemonium. Amid the shouting and recriminations, the crystalline being that had once welcomed Earth to the Assembly approached Jason. You have maneuvered us all into a precarious position, Ambassador. It vibrated softly. I hope you understand the forces you've set in motion. Jason met its gaze unflinchingly. Sometimes the board must be upended before a new game can begin. As the Assembly fractured and alliances solidified, fleets of starships began to mobilize across the galaxy. The drums of war echoed through the stars, heralding a conflict that would reshape the very fabric of galactic society. The Martian sky burned. Plumes of acrid smoke billowed from the shattered dome of the colony, casting an eerie pall over the red landscape. Inside the Assembly chamber, Ambassador Jason Warren's voice thundered with barely suppressed fury. This unprovoked attack on a peaceful human settlement cannot stand. He thumped his hand on the podium, causing several alien delegates to flinch. I demand immediate action against these primacy aggressors. Archduke Razik's scaled form rose, towering over the surrounding delegates. The humans provoked this conflict with their warmongering. We will not be drawn into their petty squabbles. The crystalline being presiding over the session vibrated in distress. Order! We must approach this situation with calm deliberation. Jason's comm unit chirped urgently. He stepped away, leaving the chamber in an uproar. General Novak's grim face filled the small screen. It's worse than we thought, Ambassador, Novak reported. I'm authorizing full mobilization. Colonel Petrov is already scrambling the fleet. In orbit above Earth, a swarm of newly retrofitted warships surged to life. Their hulls gleamed with Vloraxi bioorganic enhancements, pulsing with hardly restrained energy. Colonel Petrov's voice crackled over the comms. All ships form up on Vector 227. We're punching straight through their lines. The void erupted in a dazzling light show as human and primacy forces clashed. Earth's enhanced shield shrugged off volleys that would have vaporized their previous designs. Retaliatory fire lanced out, carving Eliani cruisers into space debris. Aboard the Primacy flagship, Commander Spice's mandibles clicked in frustration. Their technology, it's advanced beyond our projections. Initiate Operation Sundering. A sleek Eliani stealth craft slipped past the human defensive grid, making for a massive structure in high Earth orbit. Arsenal Station, humanity's primary shipyard and weapons manufacturer, hung vulnerable against the star-studded backdrop. Dr. Alice Chen frowned at her display, noting an anomalous power surge. Something's wrong. Run a full system diagnostic now. Alarms blared as critical systems began failing across the station. Chen's eyes widened as she pieced together the terrifying truth. We've been infiltrated. Lock down all command functions. Her fingers flew across the console, injecting a hastily modified virus into Arsenal's network. The station went dark, then emergency lighting flickered to life. A violent shudder ran through the superstructure as the gravity generators failed. Chen fought down a wave of nausea as she floated free of her chair. We've stopped the saboteurs, but we're losing orbital stability. All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation. On Earth, General Novak received a priority alert. His face hardened as he absorbed the implications. Choke point protocol. They're trying to strangle our supply lines. He opened a secure channel to Ambassador Warren. Jason, I need you for a special operation. We have to break their blockade before our defensive line collapses. Warren nodded grimly. I'm on it. Assemble a strike team. We're going behind enemy lines. Days later, deep in contested space, Warren's stealth craft drifted silently towards a Primacy supply depot. As his team prepared to breach the station's hull, their sensors lit up. Sir, his second-in-command hissed, we're picking up energy readings off the charts. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Warren's eyes narrowed as he studied the readout. Precursor artifacts? My God, if the Primacy gets their hands on this. He made a split-second decision. Transmit these coordinates to Dr. Chen. We can't risk losing this intel if we're captured. The message streaked across subspace, racing towards the failing Arsenal station. As Chen's team fought to stabilize their decaying orbit, a new variable entered the equation, one that could tip the scales of this interstellar conflict. The opening moves had been made. Now, with Arsenal teetering on the brink and an unprecedented power within reach, the true battle for humanity's future among the stars was about to begin. The emergency klaxons aboard Arsenal Station wailed as Dr. Alice Chen fought against the failing artificial gravity. Sparks erupted from overloaded consoles, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Evacuation pods now! Chen shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. She stumbled towards the nearest escape hatch, clutching a reinforced case containing priceless precursor data. As the pod detached, Chen caught a final glimpse of Arsenal's superstructure, twisting and buckling. The station's death throes sent shockwaves through space, buffeting the small craft. Warning lights flashed red as debris peppered the hull. No choice, Chen muttered, gritting her teeth. She jettisoned the case, watching it tumble away into the expanding field of wreckage. Better lost than destroyed entirely. Hours later, a Vloraxi search vessel plucked Chen's battered pod from the void. As she stepped aboard on shaky legs, a priority transmission crackled through. Dr. Chen, this is Colonel Petrov. We've detected multiple Primacy ships converging on your position. Spica is after the artifacts. Chen's blood ran cold. The data. I had to jettison it during Arsenal's collapse. A hiss of static, then. Understood. We're initiating immediate extraction. Hold tight. The Vloraxi ship shuddered as energy beams lanced past. Through the view screen, Chen watched Eliani vessels swarming the debris field, tractor beams sifting through the wreckage. Alarms blared. A Primacy boarding craft had latched onto their hull. Intruder alert! The Vloraxi captain's normally melodious tones were sharp with urgency. All hands! Repel boarders! The ship rocked with internal explosions. Chen ducked as plasma bolts seared overhead, leaving molten streaks across bulkheads. Vloraxi defenders fell, their iridescent blood spattering the deck. A shadow loomed. Chen looked up to see an Eleni assassin, mandibles clicking in anticipation. its barbed limb raised for a killing blow, only to be severed by a blazing energy blade. Colonel Petrov materialized from a shimmering stealth field, his face grim beneath his combat helmet. "This way, Doctor, now!" They sprinted through smoke-filled corridors towards Petrov's waiting stealth craft. As they reached the airlock, a deafening explosion tore through the Vloraxi ship's engineering section. Petrov slammed the hatch controls. "Go! Go! Go!" Their small craft disengaged, accelerating hard. Through the rear viewport, Chen watched the Vloraxi vessel erupt in a silent blossom of fire. Her fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. "How many?" she asked, voice tight. Petrov's jaw worked. "Too many, but you're safe. That's what matters now." He tapped a communication panel. "Ambassador Warren, package secure, sending footage of primacy atrocities now." Chen sagged into her seat as adrenaline ebbed. "The artifacts? We can't let Spica get his claws on them." Petrov nodded. "Agreed, but locating them in that debris field will be like finding a needle in a haystack. Unless..." His eyes narrowed as he studied navigational data. "There might be a way. Ever heard of the Rylathi, Doctor?" As Petrov outlined a daring plan, their ship accelerated towards an uncertain rendezvous. Behind them, the Arsenal's graveyard burned, a silent testament to lives lost and the treasures yet unclaimed. Here, the debris field surrounding Arsenal Station's corpse glittered in the starlight, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Ambassador Jason Warren stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes hardened as he surveyed the wreckage. "All teams, report in," he commanded, his voice tight with tension. Colonel Petrov's gravelly response crackled over the comms. "Strike Team Alpha in position. No sign of the artifact yet, but we're picking up faint energy readings." "Understood. Proceed with caution," Warren replied. He turned to the Vloraxi sensor officer, whose crystalline form shimmered with awe-inspiring excitement. "Any luck pinpointing the Crucible's location?" The alien's response came as a series of musical tones. "Negative, Ambassador. The debris is interfering with our scans. We'll need to get closer." Warren nodded grimly. "Take us in, nice and slow." The fleet of stealth ships glided forward, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Suddenly, a barrage of energy fire erupted from the floating wreckage. "Ambush!" Petrov's voice shouted through the comms. "Primacy forces everywhere!" The void erupted in chaos as human and Eliani ships engaged in a frenzied dogfight. Warren's hands gripped the command console, his knuckles tightening. "All teams, push through! We can't let them get to the Crucible first!" On the Rylathi dreadnought, Dr. Chen sat cross-legged in a chamber suffused with psychic energy. The alien telepaths surrounded her, their elongated heads pulsing with eerie light. Chen's eyes snapped open, glowing with borrowed power. "There!" she exclaimed, her voice echoing with otherworldly resonance. "I can sense it. Northwest quadrant, Sector 17. Warren relayed the coordinates to Petrov's team. The colonel's response was terse. "Acknowledged, moving to intercept." The battle intensified as both sides converged on the Crucible's location. Warren watched in horror as General Novak's ships broke formation, charging headlong into the fray. "Novak, what are you doing?" Warren demanded. "Winning this war," came the curt reply before the general's channel went silent. Novak's gambit paid off. In the chaos of his assault, Petrov's team slipped through enemy lines. "We've found it," the colonel reported triumphantly. "Breaching the compartment now." A deafening screech tore through the comms, causing everyone on the bridge to wince in pain. When Warren's vision cleared, he gasped in shock. An impossibly massive primacy dreadnought had materialized from a subspace rift, its weapons already charging. "By the stars," Warren breathed, his mind blown at the sight. The monstrous ship opened fire, its planet crackers and singularity lances carving swaths of destruction through the Allied fleet. Entire squadrons vanished in the blink of an eye. Warren's tactical officer shouted over the din of battle. "Sir, at this rate, they'll obliterate the entire sector in minutes." The ambassador's mind raced, weighing impossible choices. With a heavy heart, he opened a channel to Petrov. Colonel, listen carefully. We have no choice. You need to overload the crucible. Silence stretched for an agonizing moment before Petrov responded. Understood, sir. It's been an honor. Warren watched on the interface as Petrov's team dragged the pulsing artifact away from Allied lines. The crucible's glow intensified, building to a blinding crescendo. Then, in a silent flash that seemed to bend reality itself, it detonated. The resulting shockwave tore through space-time, engulfing ships on both sides indiscriminately. Warren's flagship rocked violently, systems failing across the board. As the cosmic maelstrom subsided, he stared in disbelief at the devastation left in its wake. Where the Primacy Armada had been, there was now only a yawning void. Scattered debris and a handful of crippled Allied ships were all that remained of the once mighty fleets. Warren slumped in his chair, the weight of countless lives lost bearing down on him. He turned to his communications officer, his voice hoarse. Contact Earth. Tell them we won. But at what cost? As the battered remnants of the task force limped towards home, Warren knew that the repercussions of this victory would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity had proven its mettle among the stars, but the price of defiance had been steep indeed.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.